From the ESPN Radio 106.1 FM studio, welcome to Virginia Sports Exchange, where sports and business intersect. I am your host, Stephen Lewis, along with co-host and show creator Jonathan Johnson. Virginia Sports Exchange is a radio show and podcast where we discuss the dynamics of sports and the opportunities it creates economically for individuals in our region, interviewing those with multiple roles in athletics. Today's show is sponsored by 804 Coaches for Change, a local nonprofit that gives youth education-based athletic and activity opportunities that may not normally exist. Their fifth annual community classic, as you can see here, is scheduled for December 19, 20, 22nd, and 23rd. 4 high school tournaments, 2 girls, 2 boys. Tickets go on sale soon. Visit 804coachforchange.com for more information. This program is also brought to you by 6335 Restaurant 6335, where great food meets great vibes. Call 804-728-1768 for more information. That's 804-728-1768, 6335 Restaurant. We are thrilled to have our first guest in the studio with us. He's a VCU graduate that has shot up the sports journalism ranks extremely quickly, and rightfully so. Richmond Times-Dispatch Deputy Sports Editor Zach Joachim. Zach, what's up, man? How you doing?
Stephen and Jonathan, I'm honored to be the first guest of the show.
Yes, sir.
Thinking of me.
Man, thank you for being here, man. Really excited to have you. I thought it would be cool to kind of turn the tables on you a little bit and ask you some questions, and instead of you always asking the questions, man.
It is a nice change of pace. I was wondering what I needed to have prepared coming here, because I'm always used to writing down the questions before an interview, and I was like, no, I guess they're asking me the questions.
That's right. My first question is, have you thought out from last night from the state championship game, the soccer? St. Chris won the state championship in soccer last night at City Stadium. It was freezing. It was snowing. It was snowing at the soccer. It was crazy.
Wild.
It was wild, bro. It was cold. In Richmond at City Stadium.
I've never covered a soccer game that had a little snow before, and we were joking on the sideline. I think this is why the public schools play soccer in the spring, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But Cole Butler winner in the 77th minute, it was a heck of a hit. That was a fun game to cover, man.
It was. You were down there with no coat on, man. How did you?
Jessica Hendricks. Shout out to Jessica Hendricks, who's the photographer for the Kickers.
Yes.
She does phenomenal work.
Yes, she does.
She gave me a Richmond United hoodie early on in the game because she saw me struggling a little bit there on the sideline.
Yeah.
So I was all right after Jessica helped me out.
Awesome.
But it was freezing, yes.
I appreciate you being there, man. So just to get started, man, talk about your journey. Went to VCU, was a journalism student there and ran in the paper and stuff there, to RTD, now the role that you have now. Mm-hmm. Rise was very quick, man. So how did you get it done for those that want to get in sports journalism?
I grew up loving sports and loving writing. I didn't know how I wanted to combine them, right? And I think that for a lot of college freshmen, you're trying to navigate what you want to do with your majors, and I was just an English major, and I had a ton of people ask me, what do you plan to do with that? And I had no idea, but I always think back to my childhood when I kind of first realized that it would be a career path that I'd be passionate about. My mom is from New Orleans.
Okay.
I've told this story a lot, and I would visit there a lot when I was a kid, and we went a little bit before Hurricane Katrina. And she took me back down there after Katrina, made sure and drove us through the 9th Ward, which is one of the neighborhoods most affected by the devastation of Katrina. And then and the Saints were displaced from the Superdome for a long time, if you remember, because the Superdome was damaged by the hurricane. Mm-hmm. And I always remembered their first game back. I watched it on TV with my mom, and I remember screaming "Who dat?" at the TV with her. I'm a Patriots fan, but I definitely have some Saints fandom in me because she grew up a fan of that franchise, and just to see what that team meant to that city. It was a Monday Night Football game. They were playing the Falcons, and I don't think the best Patriots teams, the best Steelers or Cowboys teams could have gone into the Superdome and beat the Saints that night.
That was the one with the punt block, right?
Yes.
Gleason, is it? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that game.
A famous game and a famous atmosphere, and just seeing what that sports team meant to that community, I think was one of the, in a moment of trauma for everyone while that city was healing. I think was one of those early moments of inspiration for me when I realized the power of sports to galvanize a community, and that's what I love about it the most. And then shout out to Bryant Drayton, which some people locally might remember that name. He was the sports editor at the Commonwealth Times, VCU student paper when I was a freshman. And I was just waiting in line trying to get food at the end of my freshman year, man. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life yet. And I was just talking with somebody in line, and she asked me what I was passionate about, and I said sports and writing. And this is one of those, it kind of felt like there was a spiritual connection there or anything, or like, or, life was pointing me on the right direction because Bryant was standing behind me, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, my name's Brian. I'm the sports editor at the Commonwealth Times. I heard you say that you love sports and writing. Here's my phone number, and do you want to write for the CT?" And so that was the beginning of my sports journalism journey. And there were a lot of people that have meant the world, along the way. Michael Phillips was my first editor at the You're a TD alum as well. That's a great family. Gabe Hawari was the part-timer who kind of referred me after he left for USA Today. He's still a journalist in the area.
Wow.
And so I think I was lucky enough to have people around me that pointed me in the right direction. And once I started at the TED, I fell in love with it.
Awesome, man. Sports journalism has changed so rapidly with social media, and everybody's a journalist now because you have a phone and you have a camera and you can put it up. What are you doing at the TD to trying to keep journalism as we know it and sports journalism kind of at the forefront? What are you doing to make sure the RTD kind of stays at the forefront here?
You got to have a multimedia discipline, right? I mean, we still have the daily print publication, and so you still have a deadline every day, and the 7 o'clock VCU games kill me because the deadline's about 9:15. And so, exactly. So game goes final about 9:05, and I'm trying to hammer out, the 20-inch story, which is like 600-700 words or so, for the paper the next day before you do interviews and everything. But you're trying to get video, you're trying to have an Instagram presence, trying to have a Twitter presence, interact with athletes too. I mean, I think understanding what appeals to kids growing up in the sports world these days, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time kids will, tag us with their huddle or their highlights during the season. And make sure you retweet that and everything. And interact with like the Max Preps posts and everything, and just understand how modern sports journalism is consumed. I did a story, shout out to Dexter Richardson and his family over at Thomas Dale, who's an amazing young athlete, football player, basketball player, track and field. And one of my favorite stories I've ever done was in gym class, had a cardiac event, passed out while he was doing pull-ups.
Yeah, I remember that story,
Ended up getting open heart surgery.
Yeah.
Now, it was scary, but happy story because he ended up figuring out that he had a genetic condition that they got figured out.
Yeah.
And so it all worked out for him. And I did a story on him, and he was on the front page of the Times-Dispatch, and his parents gave it to him. And I remember them telling me that his first words were, "So this is what a newspaper looks like." Right? So, but I understand that because even when I was growing up, like I love the Virginian Pilot. Shout out to Jamie Frankenberry and everyone down there. They do amazing work, and that was the paper that I grew up loving and kind of inspired.
That's right. Maury High School, right? You're from down there?
Yeah. I went to Maury. Roll Doors. Commodores. Amazing football program these days.
Yes.
I got to cover my alma mater over at Verina earlier in the season. Shout out to Coach McCain and everything that they're doing down there because they're amazing to watch. But I didn't pick up the daily print paper when I was in high school a whole lot, right? But I remember when I was a baseball player at Maury, seeing the 757 teams posts and reading some of those articles and what it meant to me to see my name in the paper.
Right.
And so I always remembered what that meant, and just understanding that there's generations consume media in different ways and trying to adjust to that while still producing daily print paper every day, having in mind to getting videos and all the social media interaction and stuff, and figuring out, the ways to frame your journalism so that it appeals to a new generation.
Got you. What would you tell a young person that wants to be the next Zach Joachim? What would you tell? How did they get into it?
Don't be the next me. Be the next you first and foremost, right? I would say it sounds cliche, but it's so true, is to follow your heart, right? And to lean into what you're passionate about. And I think to consume journalism from journalists that you admire, right? I remember growing up watching Around the Horn. On ESPN, it was a favorite, PTI.
R.I.P.
Right? Yeah, I know.
It's crazy.
Tony Rowell and all of those guys. Yeah. That show was awesome. They still do PTI, I think, right?
Yes.
And watching those guys and trying to be a sponge, right? And learn. And like I said, read some of the local journalists too. Larry Rubama down in the 757.
Yeah, Larry.
Is
he still working on
that? I think he's still at the Pilot.
Nice.
And Rich Radford was my baseball coach growing up. Which helped a lot too because he was the sports editor at the Pilot for a long time.
Gotcha.
And so I think just if you see work that you want to emulate and get into that field, then consume it, right? And be a sponge and try and figure out how can I practice this to get as good as I can at it. So if you see a career field that you admire, lock in on those journalists, consume their media, and try and learn and grow in that regard. Because when you find something that you're passionate about and you can chase that, then, I would throw in too that like the hours are tough.
Yes.
And
yes.
That's definitely something that I struggle with.
Sure.
And so you've got to have that right perception about what you're getting into. And to be candid too, nobody gets in journalism really to get rich either.
That's true.
And so that's
true.
That's not
That's
one
true.
of the main pursuits of it either.
That's true.
And so to be realistic about the career field that you're getting into, but I love what I do every day.
Yeah.
And I you don't. It's so important to keep in mind with your career path you do when you're grinding and working hard. Like, you don't have to do it every day. You get to do it every day.
That's right.
And every time I walk into the Siegel Center, or I'm on the sidelines of an awesome high school football game, or I get to do a story on a young man like Samart Lemons, who's inspiring people in this community with what he's been through.
Yep.
Then I'm reminded how much I love my job and how lucky I am to get paid to write about sports, which is awesome.
Awesome. You talked about Little College. I know Jonathan had a question about Virginia Tech. And
What do you think about the new hire?
James Franklin?
Yes.
Is that official?
Is it official yet?
I thought it was official.
I don't think it's official.
I don't think they've announced it yet, but the rumblings of
looking
her
like
is that,
okay. So your take on what's going on there.
I mean, he obviously had a lot of success at Penn State. Man, it's a brutal business, isn't it? To go from where they were at in the last couple of years to losing your job mid-season like he did. But after the success that he's had, I think that you can't help but be excited from a Richmond area perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
I would specifically be excited about his recruiting roots here, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember, especially like covering Highland Springs over the years, obviously Lauren Johnson, legendary head coach there, played at Virginia Tech.
Yes.
The relationships between those programs have a long, rich history. I did a story on Kelvin Gilliam recently, who was the 2020 All-Metro Player of the Year in the spring of 2021, because it was that weird pandemic-altered season. But he's been very much a leadership voice for that Hokies program. Amid a season of adversity for them, he's one of 5 Highland Springs players, one of 9 Richmond area kids on the roster there.
Many over there, okay.
Takai Heath, Noah Jenkins, Brennan Johnson, right?
Yep.
Some guys that I remember from All Metro days, and then from other programs, Jeremiah Coney, who played at
that's
Hermitage,
right. Yeah, that's right.
Christian Williams, the collegiate kid.
Yes,
Do you remember?
yes,
Right, who was a
receiver.
heck of a player there.
Yeah.
So a bunch of Richmond area guys, and James Franklin, Penn State was always able to get a lot of talented Richmond area kids, right?
Yeah,
So he's got
Davion Brown from Trinity. So I wonder I'm sure he's gonna go after him if he gets the job, right?
I know
Go to
Davion
Tech.
hasn't announced it, but I think a lot of people speculate that
that's
could be
gonna
where
happen.
he goes.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But I liked Brent Pry a lot every time I interviewed him, right? Super cool guy. And the thing that I respect a great deal about what he did at Tech was lean into those recruiting roots. He's like, in order to be the best in Virginia, we got to get the best in Virginia.
For sure.
And so that's what I'd be excited about with James Franklin is hopefully being able to see a lot of the best talent that comes out of the Richmond area, because we got a lot of great high school football players, as Stephen, as well as anyone. I'm working directly with Darius Gray, one of the best players in the area right now.
DG, my man. Yes, sir.
Who's going to South Carolina. And being able to get those guys, because it's so much fun to watch UVA and Tech when you're a Richmond area guy. When you've got Jay Sean Richardson from UVA perspective at Verina is going there next year, Damari Carter, right? And so we love that from a coverage standpoint too.
For sure.
When those kids that I wrote about in All Metro, I can then go interview
Brandon Jennings,
when they're at
VCU.
UVA and Tech. Exactly.
Yep.
Oh my gosh,
Makes sense.
I love interviewing Brandon every time. And I think, like, those cheers when he takes the floor at the Siegel Center, too, are special. Fats Billups is another example of it, right? He's obviously transferred. Didn't work out the way he wanted it to at VCU, but people will always love Fats because he represented his hometown for his hometown program.
For sure.
So super excited about that with James Franklin being able to get a bunch of the area's best players, hopefully, to go to Tech.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
That was just my thing. I just want to see UVA and Virginia Tech's rivalry mean something again. So I was excited about it, although I'm not. I'm a Hokie fan now because of Takai, but I would like to see that rivalry mean something again.
And the NIL?
The NIL,
you want
yes. And it's, as far as the impact on NIL on recruiting, you think we have a chance in Virginia to compete with Alabama, the Texas in the future?
I think so, in terms of what I've heard with the resources that UVA and Tech are willing to put into football. And it seems like this season that's certainly paid dividends for UVA, right?
Yes.
Kenny Elliott's been able to be there. How much fun have they been to watch?
Yes.
this year. Although that UVA Tech game at the end of the year is going to be a lot of fun. We'll see if Tech can kind of spoil their dream season here. But I mean, I see it mostly from a basketball perspective, and so I think of it from like a VCU frame of reference with a big college that doesn't have a football program. Right. I grew up an ODU fan, which I know a lot of VCU fans are that rivalry went for a long time, and so not crazy to hear me say that. But my first VCU games, I was wearing silver and navy face paint and waving the pom poms coming up from Norfolk to see ODU and VCU play in the CAA tournament at the Coliseum.
I love it. Love it.
So those were some fun college basketball days, and I say that to make the point that when ODU put a lot of resources into football, the basketball program suffered. Right? And so I think from a VCU perspective, they certainly have an advantage, and Ed McLaughlin has talked about that a lot, about the resources they can put into basketball because they don't have football. Yes. And so it's tough, especially for like a UVA, when you've got a national championship caliber basketball program, and you're trying to also have a national championship caliber football program. That's hard, right? Yeah. And especially, and they've got resources that they put into lacrosse, soccer, tennis, right? Swimming, like all these amazing programs that compete at the national level too. They got to cover a lot of bases. Football is obviously Tech's identity, and so I think from a Tech perspective, they probably have it's more streamlined with the resources they can put into football. As far as competing with the Alabamas of the world, man, I don't know. That's a high threshold. Those SEC schools, Georgia, et cetera, put a lot of resources into football. And so I think that's a tough threshold to meet. But I do think that the love and the passion is certainly there in those fan bases and those alumni bases to put those resources that it takes to be able to compete at the national level.
Got you. Virginia Sports Exchange here, 106.1 ESPN Radio FM. Switching over to professional talk a little bit, Zach. What would you think about Virginia having a pro football or basketball team? Do you think we can sustain it? How would that work? I know we claim Washington Commanders, but I've never been a big, Washington guy. I want to have our own team. So what do you think, even with women's sports now? What do you think? Do you think that's possible in the next 5-10 years or so? What do you see?
We need the arena, right? I think is where it all starts, and we've heard a lot about the Green City project.
Yes.
That the timeline has shifted on that, but I think that if you can put an arena with the capacity for a professional sports franchise, then you could do it. I think there's obviously a lot of momentum specifically behind women's basketball in this area.
Yep.
And so I think that that's probably the most realistic one. The A10 women's tournament at the Henrico Sports and Events Center has been awesome to see the amount of people that have turned out there to support. And you think of the UR women's program, right, and what they're doing right now, being ranked in the top 25.
Very strong.
Coach Aaron Roussel is phenomenal. Maggie Dugan is one of my favorite college players to watch that I've ever had a chance to cover. And so I think that's probably the most realistic opportunity if you can get an arena that can house it. To maybe get a WNBA franchise here, which would be amazing. I mean, from a journalist perspective, I would love that.
Sure.
Right? And we'd all love it from a fan and a coverage standpoint to be able to have that opportunity to see this community support a franchise of that caliber. But you got to have the arena. And I remember, Commanders training camp here got a ton of traction over the years, right? I don't know if it worked out exactly how they'd envisioned from a Washington perspective and from a Richmond perspective, because it's obviously not here anymore. But they built that beautiful facility that was able to house it, and so I think that, there were thousands of people on those sidelines, and it was a huge event in Richmond coming out to watch that. And so the love for sports is certainly here, and I know that I feel like we've been having that conversation my entire life down in the Hampton Roads area too, because people in the 757 want to say too, like, why doesn't Virginia have
they're pushing hard for an arena? 757.
I think people have wondered too, and I've always wondered this: is it possible to build something? I've driven that stretch of 64 more times in my life than I can remember. Can you tap into both fan bases, right? And build something in the Williamsburg region, that's viable for fans from Richmond and fans from the 757 to come up to watch and be fans of the same franchise. I don't know if that's realistic, but I've always wondered if you were going to have an NFL or an NBA or a major league team or something like that. I think that's what you'd have to do. You'd have to build something so that both of those fan bases could access it.
Merge it.
I agree. I agree with that.
That makes sense.
I like that idea. A central location, but again, we know they want to be in the city. That was a big thing. You're around for the WNBA talks or the G League.
Yes.
They wanted to come to Richmond, and they didn't want Henrico. They didn't want Chesterfield. They specifically wanted to be in the city.
Yeah.
We didn't have the specs for it. So,
Right.
That was one of the big things. So I don't know if that's what's holding it back.
Yeah.
Not having somewhere in the city of Richmond.
Yeah.
We've all followed, obviously, the stadium saga over the years. I think of the Navy Hill project and everything, and that's not my area of expertise to tell you why that hasn't happened in recent years, but I know that there's obviously a lot of bureaucracy to get through with funding a project of of that magnitude and finding a space. I know people have talked about like Rockets Landing, but like I would go back to Green City and say that's where you got to start, is being able to put an arena here that can house 20,000 people, 20,000 people to be able to put a professional sports franchise there. And that takes a lot of, work with city council and the surrounding counties about how you're going to make that work from a financial standpoint.
Gotcha. Virginia Sports Exchange here with Richmond Times-Dispatch Deputy Sports Editor Zach Joachim. Speaking of stadiums, CarMax Park is here now, opens up 2026. You got the Commanders having their new stadium coming now. That looks like it was official now on the ORFK lot as well. So give us your thoughts on that, how that's happened.
I'm super excited for VCU baseball, right? Having that they recently agreed to the deal to be able to play there, because that took a lot of negotiation between VCU and the city to try and make that happen, and the Flying Squirrels. I love going to Squirrels games so much. And the Diamond has a great
They do such a good job.
Man, they do,
the
man.
entertainment is
Shout out to
good.
and to everyone over there.
Jonathan knows those guys too, man. They do a great job.
And it doesn't seem to matter, and maybe this is true for a lot of, I grew up on the Norfolk Tides, and Harbor Park is gorgeous, and this is probably true for a lot of minor league franchises. It doesn't really matter if they're winning or not at the time, right? Like, I've seen, that stadium buzzing when the Squirrels are struggling, and I've seen it buzzing when they're playing great baseball. And so I think the community interest has always been there to pack that stadium out. The city was certainly ready for a new ballpark. I'm so excited to see CarMax Park because the Diamond had a great history, but man, those stadiums.
It was time.
It was time. Those lines for the concessions and everything. We needed it for sure, and it seems like as long as I've lived in the Richmond area, which is since 2018, that's been a conversation that kind of dominates the sports discourse around the area about getting that new ballpark, right? It goes back to people who've been in the area longer than me know this better about the Braves. Right. And when we had a AAA franchise here, that's why you have so many Atlanta Braves fans in the area, right?
Yep.
And it was sad when they left, because I think they were promised a new ballpark, and the timeline kept getting pushed back and kept getting pushed back, and then it never happened. But we're here finally, and I'm excited to see, man, how much has Scott's Addition changed over the years too. Even just since
unrecognizable.
I've been here. Yes. Even still, you drive in there, I feel like there's a new apartment complex every time.
It feels like DC, like you're in a different city when you're in Scott's Addition.
Yeah.
And I remember when I used to run, working out, and there was nothing there. And I had my little grainy phone, and I simply took my flip phone. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, guys, y'all need to invest in this area. And
opportunity.
There was nothing there.
Yeah.
And if I had the money, I would have been somewhere on the forefront. But,
for sure.
To see it become what it is it's a good look for the city.
No question.
You were on to something saying
that's
in that area.
I'm not kidding. I used to jog and run in that area before all of this. And then now we can bring the celebrities here, as I told my friends before, when I have guys visit for the club. Yeah. I don't have anywhere to take them, but now we have Rockets Landing, we have Scott's Addition, so now we kind of have
nice attractions,
some accommodations
yes,
for them, opposed to like, hey, where we going? We got to show up on like 45-minute ride, but now, we're downtown, we can stay downtown, and on tight schedules, usually teams, and they're on tight
in
schedules.
and out, right?
You're right. So.
Speaking of celebrities, this is totally an aside, but it comes to mind. Y'all see all of the famous people who were here for D'Angelo's funeral?
I did not.
I saw a little bit of it. I'm so busy, but I saw a little.
Amazing musical artist, obviously, with deep Richmond roots. I think Dave Chappelle was here. Questlove was here. Stevie Wonder was here. Like a lot of people in town.
Yeah. I had no idea.
So that was amazing, but to your point, excited to see, and get back to the original question, I'm super excited to see how that area evolves when you got the new athletics village over there, and continuing to get, I feel like,
District,
exactly, with a new I feel like there's a new apartment building every time I go over there, and a lot of that is in anticipation for how that area is going to grow in the coming years. I know VCU wants to build a tennis center over there. Obviously, sports backers, I think they've sold, right, and they're building a new stadium there. And so it's a great opportunity for VCU, a great opportunity for the city to see that area continue to grow and kind of be, I think, the center of the sports culture in the Richmond area.
Absolutely. What about, I know, do you cover the Washington Commanders a little bit every now and then? Do you?
Not really.
Okay.
For a long time, when Michael Phillips was a sports editor, he was the Commanders beat writer, and he would go to the Super Bowl and everything, and we had regular Commanders coverage. I mean, with the constraints on print news in 2025, that's obviously, I think we use like Washington Post stories and AP stories for Commanders coverage these days. Okay. I think our two main, beats from a college standpoint are myself covering VCU, John O'Connor covering the University of Richmond. Yep. And so we use
JOC. Shout out JOC.
The legend JOC.
He is the best, man.
The inspiration for my mustache.
Oh, really?
A lot of people bring that up.
I came back.
But you're no John O'Connor.
I came back. And I wrote an article on a high school game, and when I came in the next day and he gave me props on how good my article was, I was done. I was like, all right, I'm finished. I made it. JLC said I did a good article, man. So no, he's great. He's a great person as well. So
been a heck of a mentor to me as well. And obviously we David Teal used to be at Times Dispatch. I already mentioned Michael Phillips a few times. Mike Barber. Paul Woody. I could keep Tim Carell. I could keep going down the list of the legends that I had an opportunity to learn from. And the staff has obviously shrunk in the years that I've been there, but JSC has been the constant. And so I'm always grateful to everything that I've been able to absorb for him, which kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about like if you want to get into the field, go find those journalists that you admire the most, and try and see how they operate and absorb their content and emulate them best you can. And John O'Connor has been certainly one of those guys for me.
Gotcha. Virginia Sports Exchange here with Richmond Times-Dispatch. Deputy Sports Editor Zach Joachim. Big day ahead, November 15. Richmond Marathon. All right, we flipped the script on him. We're asking him questions. All right, now he's going to become an athlete. Richmond Marathon. Zach's going to get it done. All you sports guys out there, all you athletes that he's covering, we need you guys out there cheering him on November 15th. How's the training going, man? How do you feel? What should we expect? You have a time that you're trying to finish in? Go ahead.
That means the world that you'd ask about that. Thank
you.
Sir. I didn't play sports in college. Like I played baseball in high school, and I quickly realized that there was a hole in my life, right? Like that I needed that athletic outlet. Yeah. Again, I needed that goal to work toward. I needed a team, and I missed that so much, and running became that for me in my adult life. And I'm trying to get under 4 hours this year. I finished my first one last year, and I ran a 4:11.
Okay, all right.
And I was just over. I was trying to get under 4 hours last year, but it was my first training cycle. I sprained an ankle playing pickup basketball in May of the previous year, which definitely I don't know if I should have ran as soon as I did afterward, but I'd already signed up, and I had that goal that I was working toward. I didn't want to drop it, and that affected the training cycle. So I'm confident. I've PR'd the 10K, the 5K, and the half in the last couple months in the training cycle.
There you go.
So I'm confident. But you know what I was reminded of last year? I was trying to get under 4 hours, and I was around the 18-mile marker on Arthur Ashe Boulevard as you're turning up to go toward North Side for like kind of the home stretch of the race. And the 4-hour pacers passed me at that point. And I'd been out ahead of them the whole way. So from a strategic standpoint, definitely excited to run the course this year, having done it once before.
Right.
I think that makes a big difference just with your strategy, your nutrition, how you pace yourself throughout the course. But in that moment, I got relatively close to catching up to them as I like kicked through the finish. But I was just reminded that at the end of the day, like you have a target time, so important to be working toward that. But it's not about the time that you finish in, right? It's about the kids holding the signs.
That's right.
And you're fist pumping them as
Finishing.
you come through the finish and seeing thousands of people out on the streets, like I think they say America's friendliest marathon. That's the marketing thing. And but there's really an element of truth to that, and I think that's borne out. And you see it's sold out in August this year, which is wild, which is the earliest it's ever sold out. I think it was just a few weeks ago. Last year, and I want to say that was the first time that they'd sold out before the week of the race.
Incredible.
Richmond loves this event. It's maybe my favorite day of the year, just in terms of community connection through sports. Getting back to what we talked about earlier, with kind of my inspiration in getting into sports journalism, like that's so beautiful to see thousands of people out there cheering on runners. And it's great to have a target time. It's going to mean the world to me if I get in under 4 hours. I cried last year. I'll cry when I got to the finish line on that brutal downhill to finish it, by the way, which was a lot of fun.
I'd be crying for a different reason. Probably a mile in, I'll be done.
That was part of why I was crying.
So what was the recovery like after the marathon?
Yeah. I go into, in terms of my workout calendar, I'm very excited to go into bulk season, right? Because I'm kind of cutting and running a lot and biking and everything and doing more cardio, like leading up to the marathon. Yeah. And then in November, December, January, I'm lifting more and running less. Part of that is also just because I was born in July and I like the summer a lot better, so I don't want to go out and run around the city when it's in really cold winter months. But I'll be inactive for a few days, for sure. On that Sunday, I'll be sitting on the couch watching football.
No ice bags.
And icing up, yes, for sure. For sure. I'm eating pasta every night this week.
Yeah.
I love a pesto or a spaghetti or something like that. So you're trying to carb load in the week leading up. And I've tapered over the last few weeks, right? I did the last long run. It'll be 3 weeks from this coming Saturday. And so you're trying to lessen up the miles. And right now, I'm just trying to, stretch and do mobility and stuff like that every day. And you're supposed to be, by the time you get to race day, like rearing to go. You feel like you haven't run a long distance in a while, and your muscles are rested up, and you've gone through the progression to get them used to going that distance.
Okay.
So I'm feeling ready, man. My family's gonna be here, which I'm super excited for. Talked to Phil Martelli about it earlier in the week, which is awesome. Jimmy Martelli's wife is like an ultra marathon runner. So yeah, it's cool. Yeah, she's done like 50-mile races and stuff like that, which is,
wow.
Shout out to her. That's incredible. I could not do that. I was limping across the finish line for 26.2.
Fredericksburg, man.
Running to Fredericksburg. That's a good point. I'm not going to run to Fredericksburg.
One of my favorite stories I've ever done, I did off the marathon last year on Christopher David, who was an 80-year-old marathon runner. I think it was his 88th marathon that he's run in life. And he had a cardiac arrest during the race. Tiffany Johnson, who is a superhero, who is a sports backers training coach and a nurse in the BCU Health cardiac unit, saved his life on the race course. Happened to be running like not far behind him, like dropped to the ground, administered CPR, shocked him with an AED, saved his life. And now they're like best friends. And he says she's a part of his family. And that story was beautiful to do. And just like, it resonated so much with me, Chris talking about how running has saved his life twice. On that day, it almost killed him, but it saved his life, and it saved his life early on when he was struggling with some addiction issues and in his personal life, just trying to figure out his path. And he found running, and 88 marathons later, he's a happy human being who feels like he might not be here today without the sport and what it's meant to him. And so I'd just say to anyone, especially if you grew up around athletics and you were used to having that outlet, I felt a little lost in those years. I didn't have that sports pursuit and have, people that I'm running with to be able to work toward that goal with. And so I think it's a little heavy on the knees. And so you certainly got to manage the workload on your body and on your muscles, man. But it's a beautiful, beautiful sport that has meant the world to me. And that day of the Richmond Marathon is one of my favorites around the calendar every year. Although the traffic is obviously
an issue,
incredibly difficult. I was in a fan for a few years, and I realized when I moved to Richmond, I didn't realize what I was getting into, and I couldn't get out of the fan those days. So I'm lucky to live downtown now, so just like a few blocks from the finish line, so I can walk down to Browns Island. But if you're not running, get somewhere out on the marathon course and hand people water, cheer people on, maybe try and get down to the finish line on Browns Island because it's a beautiful day.
Awesome, man. Yes, sir. Well, Zach, thank you so much for being our first guest, man. We really appreciate it. This was awesome. I had you on my mind to talk to, so appreciate all you do for sports in the area and for the community, and we look forward to continuing to read your stuff in the Times-Dispatch. So,
Stephen and Jonathan, the kind words mean the world, gentlemen. Thank you all so much for thinking of me and having me on. I'm excited to see where the podcast goes from here.
Appreciate it, man. Absolutely. Appreciate the support. So for Zach Joachim and Jonathan Johnson, I'm Stephen Lewis, Virginia Sports Exchange out. We'll see you next time.